Nobody on that airplane knew they were about to witness a moment that would silence an entire cabin. General Marcus Whitfield sat quietly in seat 2A, his weathered hands folded in his lap, his eyes fixed on the small window beside him. He wore a plain gray jacket, no medals, no insignia, nothing that hinted at the 4 stars he had carried for over a decade before retirement. To anyone glancing his way, he looked like an ordinary elderly man traveling alone. But Marcus Whitfield was not ordinary. He had commanded thousands. He had buried friends. And today, he was flying across the country to bury his only son. The flight attendant, Denise Coldwell, moved briskly down the aisle checking boarding passes. When she reached seat 2A, she paused. Her eyes scanned Marcus from his worn shoes to his tired face, and something in her expression shifted into suspicion. She leaned close and spoke in a low, clipped voice. "Sir, I need to see your boarding pass again. This is the first-class cabin." Marcus reached into his jacket without a word and handed her the pass. She studied it, frowned, and looked back at him as if the paper itself might be lying. "There must be some kind of mistake," she said. "Would you mind stepping to the back with me? I think there's been a seating error." A young woman across the aisle glanced up, uncomfortable, but said nothing. Marcus felt the familiar weight of being doubted, a weight he had carried since he was a young lieutenant decades ago. He did not raise his voice. He simply reached for his pass again. "There is no mistake," he said calmly. "This is my seat." Denise did not back down. She insisted the ticket needed verification at the gate and asked him to gather his bag. Passengers nearby began to notice. Whispers rippled through the cabin. A businessman 2 rows back lowered his newspaper. A mother pulled her son closer, sensing tension without understanding its cause. Just as Denise reached for the overhead bin to pull down his bag, the cockpit door opened. Captain Aaron Reyes stepped into the cabin, his uniform sharp, his face unreadable. He had heard the commotion through the open door and walked back to see what was happening before pushback. His eyes moved from Denise to the elderly passenger seated calmly in 2A, and then something changed in his expression entirely. He froze. "General Whitfield," Aaron said, his voice suddenly unsteady. Marcus looked up, surprised to hear his old rank spoken aloud. "That was a long time ago, son." Aaron did not sit down. He stood at attention in the narrow aisle and offered a slow, deliberate salute, the kind reserved for moments that mattered. "Sir, I do not think you remember me. 15 years ago you pulled a young airman out of a burning transport vehicle during a training exercise gone wrong. That airman was me. I would not be alive to fly this plane if it were not for you." The cabin went completely silent. Denise's hand slowly lowered from the overhead bin, her face drained of color as the weight of her mistake settled over her. "Sir," Aaron continued, turning toward Denise without anger, only steady authority, "this man is a retired 4-star general. He is not being removed from this aircraft. He is not being questioned. If there is any confusion about his seat, it ends right now." Denise opened her mouth to apologize, but no words came out at first. Finally she managed a trembling, "I am so sorry, General, I did not know." Marcus studied her for a long moment. He had spent his whole career being underestimated, and he understood the reflex that made people see a uniform, a rank, a title before they saw the person. He did not want to shame her further. Instead, he spoke gently. "You did not know," he said, "but now you do. That is enough." Aaron remained standing a moment longer, then softened his tone as he addressed the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We will not be pushing back until every passenger on this aircraft feels they have been treated with the respect they deserve." A quiet ripple of applause began near the front and spread backward through the rows. Passengers who had watched the exchange in tense silence now nodded, some wiping their eyes, moved by what they had witnessed. Before returning to the cockpit, Aaron knelt beside Marcus's seat. "Sir, may I ask why you are traveling today?" Marcus's throat tightened. "My son," he said quietly. "He served for 11 years. We are burying him tomorrow." Aaron's composure cracked for the first time. He placed a hand gently on the older man's shoulder. "Then I will make sure this flight gets you there safely, sir. That is a promise." As the plane finally pushed back from the gate, Denise returned to Marcus's row one more time, this time with a warm blanket and a cup of coffee prepared exactly the way he liked it, black, no sugar. She did not need to say anything else. Her actions spoke for her. Somewhere over the clouds, General Marcus Whitfield closed his eyes not in anger but in something closer to peace. He had spent a lifetime being underestimated by people who judged him before knowing him. But today, in the unlikeliest of places at 35,000 feet, he had been seen, remembered, and honored by a young man whose life he had saved without ever expecting anything in return. Respect is never measured by the uniform someone wears or the seat they sit in. It is measured by the quiet strength they carry through every moment life asks them to prove themselves again. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe for more powerful stories of honor, dignity, and quiet heroism.